Most people remember Trevor Philips as a psychopath, a violent criminal living in a filthy trailer surrounded by weapons, drugs, and people who are terrified of him. But that description misses the most important part of his story. Trevor is not simply a man driven by chaos. He is a man obsessed with loyalty, because nearly everyone he has ever trusted eventually abandoned him. And for 9 years, Trevor lived inside a lie involving a failed robbery, a corrupt federal agent, a fake funeral, and a body buried under someone else's name. This is the complete case file of Trevor Philips. Trevor's exact childhood is deliberately difficult to reconstruct. His stories are inconsistent, emotional, and sometimes completely unbelievable. What remains consistent is the pattern. His home was unstable, his relationship with his mother was deeply destructive, and his father disappeared from his life. Trevor grew up surrounded by neglect, rejection, and violence. Long before he became one of the most dangerous criminals in San Andreas, he had already learned that relationships could disappear without warning. Trevor eventually attempted to build a legitimate future through military aviation. He possessed genuine talent as a pilot. Flying gave him something his childhood never had: control. But before he could complete his training, a psychological evaluation ended his military career. The institution that could have given Trevor structure decided that he was too unstable to serve. Once again, he was rejected. After leaving the military, Trevor drifted into crime. He smuggled cargo, crossed borders, and survived through violence and intimidation. Then, he met Michael Townley. According to Trevor, their first meeting became violent almost immediately. Michael arrived at an airstrip while being followed by a man whose vehicle he had stolen. Trevor killed the man with a flare gun. For most people, that would have ended the partnership before it began. For Michael and Trevor, it was the beginning. Michael was calculated, controlled, and fascinated by the image of the professional criminal. Trevor was instinctive, fearless, and willing to do almost anything. Together, they became extremely effective. Michael planned. Trevor created fear. And when a situation collapsed, Trevor was usually the one prepared to go further than everyone else. Their partnership grew into something more complicated than friendship. Trevor became attached to Michael's family and viewed himself as part of their lives. For Trevor, the crew was not simply a criminal organization. It was the closest thing he had to a family. But Michael was changing. He had a wife, children, and money. Every successful robbery gave him more to lose. The danger that made Trevor feel alive was beginning to feel like a prison to Michael. Trevor noticed that Michael was becoming cautious, but he misunderstood the reason. He thought Michael was losing his nerve. In reality, Michael was looking for a way out. Another criminal, Brad Snider, eventually joined their crew. Brad was aggressive, reckless, and openly interested in replacing Michael. He suggested that he and Trevor should abandon Michael and continue working together. Trevor refused. This is one of the central contradictions of Trevor Philips. He could betray, threaten, or kill almost anyone. But he expected absolute loyalty from the people he considered family. And at that moment, Trevor was loyal to Michael. Michael did not feel the same way. By 2004, Michael had secretly made an arrangement with FIB agent Dave Norton. The plan was supposed to end Michael's criminal life. During a robbery in Ludendorff, North Yankton, Dave would intercept the crew. Trevor was expected to be killed. Brad would be arrested, and Michael would appear to die during the escape. Michael could then disappear, move his family to Los Santos, and begin a new life under the name Michael DeSanta. Dave Norton would become the agent who supposedly killed one of America's most wanted criminals. Both men would benefit. But the operation did not happen exactly as planned. Michael, Trevor, Brad, and their getaway driver attacked a cash depot in Ludendorff. The robbery itself succeeded, but their escape collapsed. Their driver was killed. The vehicle crashed. As the surviving crew moved through the snow, Dave Norton waited with a rifle. He fired at Trevor. But Brad stepped into the line of fire. The bullet intended for Trevor struck Brad instead. Michael was then shot as part of the arrangement and fell to the ground. Trevor had seconds to understand what was happening. Brad was bleeding. Michael appeared to be dying. Police surrounded the area. Michael told Trevor to leave him behind. Trevor refused. Even with the entire operation collapsing, he still attempted to remain with Michael. Only when escape became impossible did Trevor finally run. He disappeared into the snow, believing that Michael Townley had died and Brad Snider had survived. Neither belief was true. Brad died from the gunshot wound. His body was placed inside the grave prepared for Michael. A staged funeral was held, and an empty coffin was buried beneath Michael Townley's name. Michael moved to Los Santos with his family. Trevor escaped, but he carried the events of North Yankton with him. For the next 9 years, Trevor believed that his closest friend was dead. He even had Michael's name tattooed on his body as a memorial. Trevor was also told that Brad had been imprisoned. He began sending letters to him, but Brad could never answer. Dave Norton intercepted the correspondence and wrote replies while pretending to be Brad. These letters helped preserve the official story and prevented Trevor from searching for the truth. Trevor believed he was communicating with the final surviving member of his old crew. In reality, he was writing to one of the men responsible for destroying it. After North Yankton, Trevor settled in Sandy Shores. The desert suited him. It was isolated, lawless, and filled with people who could either be controlled or frightened away. From a trailer in Blaine County, Trevor created Trevor Philips Enterprises. The name made it sound like a legitimate corporation. Its real business was weapons, narcotics, smuggling, and violence. Ron Jakowski became Trevor's pilot, radio operator, and permanently terrified assistant. Wade Hebert became another loyal follower, although Wade rarely understood the dangers surrounding him. Trevor presented himself as a criminal businessman, but his operation was held together by fear. Local gangs and rival organizations viewed him as unstable. They were correct. When members of the Lost Motorcycle Club threatened his position, Trevor responded with overwhelming violence. When competitors interfered with his plans, he did not negotiate for long. He attacked their operations, destroyed their property, and made the conflict personal. Trevor was no longer a member of someone else's crew. He was building an empire of his own. Then, in 2013, Michael made a mistake. During a jewelry store robbery in Los Santos, Michael used a familiar phrase. It was a line Trevor remembered from their old robberies. Trevor heard it during a television report and immediately recognized it. A dead man had just spoken. Trevor traveled to Los Santos and walked into Michael's home. After 9 years of mourning, he found his former partner alive, wealthy, and living with his family. Michael had everything Trevor thought North Yankton had taken from him. The reunion should have ended in murder. Instead, Trevor returned to Michael's life. Part of him was furious. Another part was simply relieved that Michael was alive. This reaction reveals more about Trevor than any act of violence. He could forgive the impossible because losing Michael a second time felt worse than living with the betrayal. Trevor soon met Franklin Clinton, Michael's new partner. At first, Franklin was another outsider entering a relationship Trevor believed belonged to him. But Trevor eventually developed respect for him. Franklin was ambitious, capable, and direct. Unlike Michael, he had not yet constructed an entire life around deception. The three men became a crew. They robbed armored vehicles, attacked government agencies, stole military equipment, and became involved with corrupt FIB officials. For a brief period, Trevor had something resembling his old life again. But the unanswered questions remained. Why had Michael survived? Why had he never made contact? And why did Brad's letters feel wrong? The truth finally surfaced when Trevor confronted Michael about North Yankton. Michael admitted that Dave Norton had shot him. That admission changed everything. If Michael's death had been staged, then the grave in Ludendorff could not be empty. Somebody had been buried inside it. And if that person was not Michael, Trevor understood who it had to be. He returned to North Yankton and began digging. Michael followed him, hoping to stop the truth from being uncovered. But it was already too late. Trevor opened the coffin beneath Michael Townley's gravestone. Inside was the body of Brad Snider. 9 years of lies suddenly became one complete picture. Michael had made a deal. Dave had ambushed the crew. Brad had died. The letters were fake, and Trevor had been the intended target. Trevor had not survived North Yankton because Michael saved him. He survived because Brad accidentally stepped in front of the bullet. The discovery shattered the one belief Trevor had protected for most of his life, that loyalty still meant something. Trevor left Michael behind in the cemetery, where members of the Cheng organization captured him. He refused to rescue Michael, even after being told that his former friend could be killed. But once again, Trevor's anger could not completely destroy the connection. When Michael later returned, the two continued working together, not because the betrayal had been forgiven, but because their lives had become impossible to separate. Their final major operation was the Union Depository robbery. It was the score Michael and Trevor had imagined for years, an enormous reserve of gold, protected at the center of Los Santos. The robbery represented more than money. For Michael, it was the perfect ending to his criminal career. For Franklin, it was a way to escape the small-time life he had started in. For Trevor, it was proof that the old crew could still accomplish something legendary. They succeeded. But success did not resolve the conflict surrounding them. Franklin was pressured to choose between killing Michael and killing Trevor. If Franklin chooses Trevor, he contacts Michael and arranges a confrontation. Trevor realizes that the people closest to him have once again decided he is the problem that needs to disappear. He tries to escape, but the chase ends at an oil field. Trevor crashes into a fuel tanker. Covered in gasoline and surrounded by fire, he is killed by the same two men he once considered family. It is a brutal conclusion, but also a final repetition of the pattern that defined his entire life. Trust, attachment, betrayal, abandonment. If Franklin chooses Michael, Trevor refuses to help murder him. Despite everything Michael did, Trevor still considers killing him an act of betrayal. And if Franklin chooses to save both men, the three unite against every organization trying to control them. They eliminate their remaining enemies and survive. Michael and Trevor do not completely repair their friendship, but they reach an uneasy understanding. The truth is finally exposed. There are no more graves to open, and no more letters pretending to come from dead men. Trevor Philips remains violent, unstable, and responsible for countless crimes. His past does not excuse what he becomes, but it explains the system underneath the chaos. Trevor fears abandonment more than death. He tests people because he expects them to leave. He demands loyalty because he has rarely experienced it. And when someone becomes part of his chosen family, he can remain attached to them even after they prove that the relationship was built on a lie. That is what makes Trevor more than GTA 5's most unpredictable character. Behind the explosions, threats, and dark comedy is a man still standing in the snow of North Yankton, watching the only family he believed he had disappear. For 9 years, Trevor thought Michael was inside the grave. But the real thing buried in Ludendorff was Trevor's trust. And when he finally opened that coffin, the most dangerous man in San Andreas discovered that even he could be broken.